Hello everyone, welcome to Chasing a Murderer. And today we are on part 124 of Life Beyond the Grave, which is about the Lori Vallow and Chad Daybell case. Remember, they were using a special scoring system, and this was to determine whether people were good or evil, zombies, or just plain dark. But this was also a way to give them an indication of how many times that they lived here on Earth. Not just Earth, but possibly even other planets and other dimensions. A simple indication of whether you were light or dark basically set your future. Because if you're dark, you had set a contract with Satan. If you're light, then that contract is up with God. Similar to energy healing, they were also being ranked based off of their vibrations. Also, who was translated and what kind of powers they held. We learned that Lori Vallow enjoyed listening to Julie Rowe's podcast, who had similar ideas. One of the things that Julie was teaching, and it seemed that Lori Vallow was interested in teaching as well, is clearing out the dark entities in this world. Though Julie hadn't been caught using the word zombie, you can basically bet that a lot of these teachings did stem from Julie and other energy healers. Charles Vallow, who was marked dark, then a zombie, has been shot. According to Alex Cox and Lori Vallow, this was in self-defense. We already watched Lori Vallow, Alex Cox, and Tylee Ryan speaking to investigators on this matter. But it doesn't seem that the investigators are too worried about this being more a homicide at the time. They're thinking it's more of a self-defense. For people following this story, this is one of the most concerning parts in the timeline. Why is it that Alex and Lori were walking free after this incident? In fact, Lori Vallow would leave the police station with her husband's phone in her hand. This is questionable in itself. How will the police actually do a proper investigation if they don't even have Charles Vallow's phone? Meanwhile, people like Melanie Gibb and Zulema, well, they've been at the temple. They're praying that God might take this horrible dark entity away from Charles' physical body. And they're even using the temple without the LDS leaders understanding what their temple's being used for. In fact, according to a text from Zulema, she said she's been doing this all day long. In another text message, they say Hiplos is gone. It was a Nephi and Laban ending. I will tell you more when I see you in person, or when you see Lori in person. I'm leaving for Chile on Monday for 2 weeks. So that would be Zulema. There is a lot of code talk. What does this have to do with Nephi and Laban? That in Nephi, he's seen Lehi as a brethren rebel against him. But what is Laban? Let me kind of skip that for now and talk about how Nephi believed that God had given him lands that was referred to land of promise. This land is not part of Jerusalem. It's a land far away from Jerusalem, a land that is meant just for them to build a new Jerusalem. This is one of your biggest clues that I can give you as to what these guys had in mind, what their intentions were, at least in my research. And on this independent land that only belongs to them and God, in order to build, they will follow the commandments and only the commandments of God. This includes the leaders who are speaking for God. In these lands, they will dwell safely forever. This land, they will build a temple there, and they will actually prosper and live very well on these lands. Many people are like, why do they need so much money? Well, to buy those lands and to build temples, you need a lot. There's a lot to this story still missing. When they do get this land, they don't want to share it with other people outside of their belief system. It's theirs alone. So, as for Laban, or Laban, I don't know how to pronounce that correctly, guys. Nephi felt as if he needed to take his life in order to obtain the plates. But what is it when Charles' life was taken? What were they obtaining? Maybe Charles was taking things away from Lori. She felt as though he was her enemy and was trying to stop her from reaching the glory she was trying to reach. There was no gold plates, at least, coming from Charles' demise. The only thing that would come from his demise is a lump sum of money. At least that's what she thought. Now we're going to skip a little bit here. And Zulema, in a 2023 testimony at the Lori Vallow trial, she talks about now that Charles is gone, Lori has set her eye on her daughter, Tylee. Zulema's going to mention about moving to Rexburg, which won't happen till the end of August. So let's kind of look past that for now and focus on what she's saying that happened before that. She's talking about finances, and that's really important in this case to understand that Lori had no intentions to work and that money would be one of her biggest motivations and one of the biggest factors in this case. A mother that's supposed to be so great with her children, a loving mother, is more about the money that she's going to receive and the fact that she doesn't have to work. That's important, not loving her children. And so this must be incredibly heartbreaking to her family to finally, if they realize that Lori Vallow, she's a woman that doesn't really have a heart. She's just trying. She probably had tried, it seemed like to me, to be that person that her parents raised her to be and her community, because it's mostly Mormon. She probably was trying her best to fit in, but just didn't have what those people have. She doesn't care. She has no love for anyone other than herself. The most important thing is trying to figure out, is this something she did intentionally? Was this something that in her brain that just didn't work right? Well, I'm not a professional, and I haven't had my one-on-one to talk to Lori, so I couldn't guess. So most of it will be my opinion. But for me, and I want you guys to share in your comments below, I don't think that she was ever this good mother in the heart anyways that people thought she was. I think she was just trying to live, and it was a competition for her. She was comparing herself to other mothers, watching families around her and trying to just be the best that she thought she could be. But in reality, she just didn't have the heart that went with it. It was just emotion. We're going to listen to Zulema testify in her 2023 testimony. We'll jump back and forth a little bit here, and I'll try my best to keep you guys straight. So let's go ahead and listen from this part on. Remember, the reason why she moved back to Texas to be with Charles is she told Zulema she needed to get her finances straight.
What had happened, she said that it was 7-Eleven, therefore he had been all orchestrated by God, and she felt that because it was 7-Eleven and it was her numbers, that Charles or Hibla's had been delivered to them, to him, to her and Alex.
Okay. So when you say she told you about what happened, are you saying she told you about what she said happened to Charles Vallow?
Correct.
What did she say happened to Charles Vallow on July 11th?
said that Charles had rented a house in Gilbert. I think it's Chandler, but it was a house for her and the kids. And they had moved into this house, and he had come from out of town to pick up JJ that morning to take him to school, I believe. And while he was putting JJ in the car, Lori took his phone, and he came back to get the phone, and she didn't want to give him the phone, so they started arguing about the phone, and Alex was there, and he got involved in the fight, and they started fighting. Alex said that he was trying to protect his sister, and then Tylee came into the middle of this fight with a baseball bat and telling Charles to leave, and that Charles had taken the bat away from Tylee, and Charles had hit Alex on the back of the head with the bat, and Charles and Alex wrestled around fighting, and at one point Alex got his gun and he shot Charles, and that's how he died.
Oh my God.
So did she say what happened after that?
I'm so sorry, guys. I really have trouble listening to Zulema. It's so hard. My apologies. Okay, so she's going to talk about what happened after this. It's really difficult for me to play this, guys. All right.
She said they had called the police, and the police had interrogated them, and they had deemed it to be in self-defense.
Did you talk to her after this, after she told you about what had happened to Charles, what she said had happened to Charles? Did she talk to you again about what was going to happen next?
Lori said that there were certain things that needed to happen before the second coming could happen, and there were certain things that she was instructed that she needed to do in order to usher the second coming, and one of them was that she needed to cleanse the earth from evil spirits. So every time that something would happen will be something like another step ushering the second coming.
So was Charles's death, what she told you, part of the steps towards the second coming?
Yes.
Okay. And if you know, did Alex believe this?
I don't know.
Now, did at some point you have a conversation with her about her staying in Arizona or her moving?
This is where it's jumping ahead just a little bit. So what's going to happen, I'll go ahead and do a brief over this so you don't get too lost. So you had, remember Joe, the landlord. Charles had rented this home in Gilbert, Arizona for Lori and her children. Well, now he's been shot and the neighbors aren't happy about it. They want her gone. And Joe wants to oblige. He doesn't want to keep the house. One of his best friends died in that house. He thinks it's creepy. He just wants nothing to do with it anymore. So he's going to tell people, and he does it on Facebook as well, that he's kicking Lori and her 2 children out. He wants her gone. He wants to put the house up for sale. He wants to get rid of this house. Well, he wants Lori to move out of this house by the end of August. So, anyways, let's continue with this.
She had said that she wanted to be in Arizona, but then Chad Daybell told her that she needed to move to Rexburg, and so she packed up her house and moved to Rexburg.
What was significant about Rexburg, Idaho?
Chad had said that Rexburg, Idaho was going to be a place of refuge where there was going to be invasions of other countries coming into the United States, and that Rexburg was going to be a place where there would be soldiers and warriors that would be defending that area, and that area had been prepared by the church to accommodate people to come towards that area to be as a place of safety.
Okay. And so did Lori move to Rexburg?
Yes.
Here we are 3 years later, and we are about to go into World War III. But I'm surely certain that we're not going to have to deal with an invasion in small states like that. But for Chad Daybell, this is the kind of fear that he's sending to these people. And if they believe it, imagine World War III it's kind of firing up right now. And you believe what he's teaching, do you think you would be scared? I can imagine that there are tons of people that are saying, maybe Chad Daybell is right, and maybe we should be prepared and we should be scared. Lori Vallow is still behind bars. A lot of people are wondering, is she going to ever wake up from this delusional idea? And here's what I have to say. As long as you see these things happening, and it doesn't matter if it's going to go to the extent Chad Daybell predicted or not, as long as things happen, as long as there's sickness, as long as there's people committing crimes, she will continue to believe Chad Daybell. And now that you see this war starting up all over the world, well, that's just going to only strengthen her belief system. So I really don't think that we will see Lori snap out of this anytime soon. So right now, we're learning from Zulema that they have taught that those lands in that area, backed by the church, in fact, will be a place of safety, a place to collect a community. In other words, it's very familiar to building a new Jerusalem. They will also, as you have heard before, mention that they've seen a temple on this property. And we'll get more into that in a few months from this time at least. So let's hear what else Sulima says.
Do you know how Ms. Vallow was going to pay for things in Rexburg? How she was going to finance things?
When I asked her how she was going to finance, how she was going to live, since she didn't have a job, she told me that she was receiving Social Security from Tylee, from her dad passing away before the age of 18. JJ was receiving Social Security from his dad dying, and since she had been married for over 10 years to Charles, then she will also receive Social Security. And she said that it was something close to $6,000 a month, and she didn't need to work.
So Lori would not have to work. That was her goal. So right now I'm putting up a post by Charles Vallow's friend and landlord, Joe. So pause it and read it. That way you can get a little bit of background on how he felt about this situation. After Charles was shot, the police, the investigators in this case, they don't really look into the fact that there's some really strange bullet holes. If Charles was shot standing up, then why is there a bullet hole in the ground near where Charles was lying? How can he be an aggressor when he's laying on the ground and getting shot? According to an arrest record, they said there was no concerns that would immediately provide probable cause for an arrest. Arrest in this case, so that's insane. Now, for some reason, it would take these investigators weeks to learn that Charles and Lori's marriage wasn't doing very well. This doesn't make sense, especially since their phones were available. In my opinion, they were slacking as far as I can tell. Maybe they weren't, and they're just hiding it very well. But a lot of us that follow this case have always felt like that investigation just was followed up on, investigated way too slow. If they had investigated and come up with these bogus arrests that they usually do for other people, running a stop sign, who cares? But anyways, it didn't happen, and I really felt like this was probably one of the main turning points in this case that made it, well, it was the reason that it went the direction it went. Let's talk about what Lori Vallow did immediately after, or we don't know if she was there during the shooting. What was the truth right now? We will hear during the trial, I'm sure. But after Charles is shot, she takes Charles' rental car. That makes no sense that she would take his car, his cell phone, went to Burger King with JJ, then went to Walgreens to buy flip-flops. And I know we probably covered this, but I want to mention it just in case. When Charles was lying on the floor, the emergency personnel comes in and they take the life-saving measures they need to try to bring him back. What they noticed is there was no residue on the floor until they started their CPR. For them, this would tell them that Alex Cox most likely never performed CPR. Also, what was interesting for me was Adam Cox is in contact with Charles Vallow. They're trying to do this intervention, and he says he doesn't hear from Charles any longer, but he doesn't say he necessarily thinks something went wrong in some of these interviews. Not until he's at his friend's house with his son, Zach, a doctor friend of his. Adam says that he tells this friend that he feels uneasy about what is going on with his family. And at that point, his friend goes online and types in Charles Vallow's name, and media pops up showing that Charles Vallow's brother-in-law, Alex Cox, had shot him in self-defense. Now, Melenie Boudreaux, she says she's standing in the garage when Brandon tells her the story of what happens to Charles. Now, in this interview, I'm going to let you hear the part where she's saying, Brandon's gone crazy and he's the crazy one. He's the problem, not her. Everything she says, remember, flip it, apply it to her. But anyways, she also gives you an idea of how the whole family tries to involve the church. So what the church can do about this, I'm not certain, but they're wanting to get them excommunicated and all kinds of stuff.
He turned on me and he said, Melanie, I'm going to take the kids away from you. You're crazy. I'm going to get you excommunicated from the church and you're never going to see your kids again. And that's just from asking, hey, what's this video I found, man? What are these text messages? And so many things. And I don't know, it was like watching Charles unravel first, then Brandon did the same exact thing, and then it's just these patterns, and I'm like, you just can't make this stuff up. It's the same exact thing happening over and over again. And Lori just moved on, and she didn't play any of Charles's games, and he eventually he's back and forth. Hey, I want to be back together with you, Lori, and then he'd say, your end's coming soon. Just tons of threats. And so the day he came to the house, Summer said, hey, Alex, will you go over? And, Charles has been kind of aggressive and, acting crazy. He's going to go over there to get JJ. Will you just go over there just in case something happens? And as we see, something did happen. And I know they're trying to change that whole investigation now to make it look like Lori had something planned or Alex did, but there's no doubt in my mind about that shooting. Brandon went and ran with that story to his advantage. He pulled me into the garage, and he and my Uncle Adam said, Charles has been murdered by Alex. And just finding this out, I'm like, it doesn't feel right, but I'm like, there's got to be something more to this.
Following up on what you were saying, Melanie, so you do believe that Charles was shot in self-defense, that Alex was defending himself?
Absolutely. And I think Tylee was the biggest. I don't know, I went to her and I was just like, how are you? And she was so brave about speaking about it. And I was like, wow. And Tylee's very collected, very mature. I admire Tylee so much for how brave she was. And she explained everything, as so did Lori and so did Alex. And it made sense with how Charles had been acting. And you're in shock that it just went to that extreme. But I'm glad Alex was there to protect Tylee, because that's the only, Lori and Charles were arguing, but the only time Alex said, hey, I'm going to get involved in this is when, he had a baseball bat and was, I don't know, with Tylee, I don't know if he was going to hit her. Tylee made it sound like he was probably going to hit her and kind of taking the bat away. And I hated that Tylee had to go through that. And I know there's been a lot of criticism of how Lori acted afterwards, and how she's smiling on camera. And I know Lori, and when she's uncomfortable, she kind of, or in shock, she'll just kind of laugh or smile, try to make light of it. And I do the same thing. That's just something how we handle being in shock, and every person handles being in shock differently. But
you don't have to have a super high IQ to realize that all these little interviews that she did, they're going to be used against her. She's just straight up lying. But here's the thing. Does she understand just how deep that she got into this? Does she realize she knows Charles died? But what about these kids? And pretty soon, Lori is going to be targeting her children. Her and Brandon's children are going to become dark as well. But just know that Melanie and Lori, they're exchanging a lot of texts July 11th. Jason Mel, this is where he's kind of pulled into this. It is believed that Jason Mao meets Lori and Melanie Gibb on the way to the police department on one of these incidents. So, how far was Jason Mao getting into this? I think they did call him, but I don't think he was in with them. I think they reached out to him to get advice for something he didn't understand the full, truth of what was happening in that case. On part 125, we will share some of the interviews with Christina, Adam Cox, where they share their ideas of what they knew about this time. So around July 11th of 2019. If you like my work, please make sure that you push like and subscribe. You can also hit the notification bell to receive notifications. You can give to Patreon, or you can hit the thanks button just underneath this video. Thank you to everyone who has been so supportive. I love you guys, and I'll see you guys soon.